I'm starting to fully internalize the idea that the National Hockey League is a league of inevitability. There are cycles that we see, and even though sometimes guys might be taken out of that cycle, in the grand scheme of things, the National Hockey League will find ways to bring these characters back into the story. Because today, we are talking about a guy that I really did not think I would ever be making a video about. Ever. But I guess it's talked about, so I guess we got no choice but to do it, right? Today we're talking about Joel Quenneville, a guy who was the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks and won multiple Stanley Cup championships with that team before heading over to the Florida Panthers. Now, he also was the head coach of the Blues and the Colorado Avalanche for a while, but his last stint of coaching in the NHL was with the Cats. Now, in fact, you might actually look at his coaching record and say, hey, wait a minute. Joel Quenneville coaching the Florida Panthers in 2021-2022, he had 7 games, 7 wins. His win percentage was literally 1. What happened to this guy that made him leave the organization? And, yeah, we can very well talk about that. I'm not going to use certain words because the YouTube monetization program does not like certain things being said, but Joel Quenneville stepped down from the Florida Panthers organization amid the Blackhawks SA scandal after meeting with Gary Bettman. During the Kyle Beach situation from over a decade ago, and during the Kyle Beach investigation from a few years ago, Joel Quenneville's name was brought up because he was one of the main guys that was a part of the Blackhawks organization that was, in a way, complicit with everything that was going on. And the reason I say it like that is because of all of the sentiments from the reporting we had learned that insinuates that all of the Kyle Beach stuff that was going on was somewhat known by people in the Blackhawks organization. From the players to the coaching staff to the people up top, it is very apparent that a lot of people that were there knew what was going on. And as a result, Joel Quenneville resigned, he stepped away from the Florida Panthers, and he ended up getting banned for a few years. Now, just to be clear here, the ban that he received was lifted earlier this year in July, alongside of bans lifted over to executives Stan Bowman and Al McIsaac. Now, the thing is, you might not remember that. Why not? Because the date those bans were lifted was on July 1st, Free Agency Day. It's almost like the NHL planned, in a very particular way, to lift the bans and allow these guys who were complicit in whatever evils were going on to return to the NHL on a day where they knew everybody would be talking about everything else. Oh, Steven Stamkos, where's he going? Oh, Marchessault, where's he going? Oh, is Zegras getting traded? Oh, what's happening? Who's signing where? Is Jacob Trouba going to Detroit? Everybody was focused on that, so they used all of that as the blanket to cover what was the revealing of this ban lifting. That's neither here nor there now. It's been a few months. We haven't talked about it then. We're not going to talk about it now. Instead, we're going to talk about the head coach Joel Quenneville and some ideas that have been tossed out there by different writers and analysts that I wanted to respond to in this video. Starting out with this from earlier this week by Larry Brooks. This article was published on October 12th. It's rallying cry. It would be nonsensical to leave Chris Kreider off the Team USA roster. Now, this article doesn't have anything to do with Joel Quenneville, right? It's talking about Chris Kreider, it's talking about Team USA. That's what you might believe at first glance, but if you scroll down into the piece, this is where Larry Brooks does his kind of notes around the NHL sort of thing. He goes through different stories around the league and he just kind of puts them all together in one article. It's very weird if you wanted to get one holistic view of an article on Chris Kreider because he eventually goes over and talks about something else. But this is what Brooks writes after the Chris Kreider part in this piece. It is obviously insane to assign disproportionate weight to a team's season opener, but sometimes they can be symbolic. And I just wonder, after the Red Wings opening, 6-3 defeat to the Penguins in Detroit, 24 hours after the Penguins had been used as a speed bag by the Rangers while Detroit was fresh, whether GM Stevie Y is going to have Joel Quenneville on speed dial. Yzerman is, of course, sacrosanct in the Motor City, but so was Willis Reed in New York, and he was fired by the Knicks as head coach. And so was Bart Starr in Green Bay, and he was fired as head coach. The Red Wings' sins lays on the doorsteps of former GM Ken Holland and ownership that prioritized extending their playoff streak to what became a pro sports record of 25 years rather than taking a step or two back to reload for a championship run. They talked about 25 years the way the Yankees sometimes talk about 32 straight years of above 500 baseball. But the Red Wings now have missed the playoffs 8 straight seasons, the past 5 of the watch on Yzerman, who took command in 2019-20. Everyone likes head coach Derek Lalonde, but time waits for no man, even an icon such as Steve Yzerman. It would behoove the Red Wings to get on track early. If not a playoffs or bust Detroit, which projected contender will turn to Quenneville, cleared to return to duty for the NHL in July? This is interesting, because I will speak about Derek Lalonde first. I do think he's in a spot where it's not really guaranteed that his job security is really there. I think it was Frank Seravalli. It might have been somebody else, but I think it was Seravalli, was it, who predicted that Derek Lalonde would be the first head coach fired in this season? The fact that the Wings were so close in the 2024 season to making the playoffs, only to miss out because John Tortorella and Philly pulled the goalie, is a testament to what Derek Lalonde was capable of bringing out of this group of guys. A close enough season with excitement towards the end that instilled hope in the fans. Unfortunately, though, the Red Wings have been playing some uninspiring hockey as of late, and Derek Lalonde, you could debate, his name is right there on the forefront. Now, when it comes to what he's capable of as a coach, I honestly don't know if he's got it in him to really boost this team into what they could be for an 82-game campaign. You could also blame Stevie Y, as he pretty much constructed the roster here. Everybody was talking about, hey, Derek Lalonde isn't really great, but what more can he do when he's got Petrie and Sherratt and now Justin Hall in the top 4? It's kind of challenging. But, for the love of goodness gracious, man, Stevie Y, if you care at all about optics, if you care at all about the message that this sends to the fans, don't hire Joel Quenneville. Are you serious? It was bad enough that 1 or 2 or 3 Chicago Blackhawks found themselves onto Detroit, but fans will forgive Kane, DeBrincat, and Eric Gustafsson because they're good hockey players, for the most part. But Joel Quenneville, bringing the coach along here too, I get it. He's a guy with a winning record. I get it. He's got 3 Stanley Cups. But not him. Meanwhile, I wanted to go out there and talk about another article that was posted on the Hockey Writers. This was by Jesse Corville Lynch, going over how the Oilers hiring Joel Quenneville would be a mistake. This article dives into how the Oilers have gotten off to a slow start, and how you could say it somewhat mirrors what happened last year. Last year, the Oilers had Jay Woodcroft. They started out terribly, they fired him, they hired Knoblauch, and then boom, they made the finals. While the Oilers are only 3 games into their season, having a record of 0-3-0, this was before their first win of the season against Philadelphia, most fans are pointing the finger at the goaltending duo of Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, who haven't played well at all. But there have been some interesting rumors circulating about a possible change as the season moves along. Alan Mitchell of The Athletic alluded to the possibility of the Oilers firing Knoblauch and bringing in Quenneville, considering Quenneville's connection to new GM Stan Bowman. Some Oilers fans are convinced that the first big move by Bowman will be the announcement of Joel Quenneville as the team's new head coach. That would be a shocking development this early, as written about by Mitchell in The Athletic. And the same thing could be talked about here. But I will say, the Oilers of all teams do not really seem to care too much about those optics. Evander Kane, Corey Perry, Jake Virtanen, Stan Bowman, yeah, they're all kinda there. So honestly, hiring Joel Quenneville doesn't seem like that out there of a move for this team in particular. However, this article in the Hockey Writers, I like it because it goes over and says, hey, give Knoblauch a longer leash here. He took the team to the gosh darn finals. There's a lot more that you could believe in with Knoblauch than with Jay Woodcroft from last year, especially when you consider the fact that the Oilers' decor this season's a lot worse. They lost out on some pretty notable names, so the start that they've had, the lack of success, it's not necessarily the coach's fault. So, whether or not we can see some sort of a Joel Quenneville introduction back into the NHL over the next few weeks, that remains to be seen. But for now, if you're an Oilers fan or a Red Wings fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this idea of Joel Quenneville potentially being your next head coach? Do you see Derek Lalonde or Chris Knoblauch getting fired anytime soon? Or is it too early to tell? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.